They found his teeth before they found his name. A crooked molar caught in a sewer grate, blood still fresh. The alley behind Cicero's Speakeasy reeked of burnt gunpowder and spilled gin. Rain fell hard, cold, relentless, as if trying to wash the filth off a cursed city. A single shoe floated near the gutter, laces red with something thicker than mud. Inside, jazz still played on scratchy vinyl, unaware of the carnage outside. Johnny Romano, 32, loyal muscle to the Mancini family, was now fragments. No witnesses. No leads. Just teeth and terror. And in the shadows, someone lit a cigar with shaking hands. They went loud, he whispered to no one. That wasn't supposed to happen. The massacre wasn't sanctioned. Not by the Dons. Not by the code. Which meant only one thing. Someone broke the blood oath. And that someone was about to burn. Johnny Romano wasn't supposed to die tonight. He was supposed to collect dues from a crooked councilman and meet his girl at Marzano's diner. Instead, he got diced like meat in the alley behind a jazz club. Across town, his younger brother Michael sat in the diner booth, nervously glancing at the clock. 22. A failed seminary student turned bootleg runner. Michael looked too soft for this life. He stirred cold coffee, eyes darting to the door every time it chimed. A waitress, mid-30s, lipstick smeared, offered a sad smile. "You late again, hon?" Michael nodded, but didn't speak. Something churned in his gut, something colder than the rain outside. He didn't know it yet, but the night was about to eat him alive. In 1 hour, he'd hold his brother's chain in one hand, and a gun he didn't know how to use in the other. At the precinct, Detective Claire Monroe stood over the report like it was dipped in acid. "You're telling me he exploded," she snapped. Her partner, Evans, shrugged. "That's what the forensics guy said. Explosive packed cigar, maybe. But that kind of precision, mob tech." Claire ran a hand through her damp blonde hair, lips tight. "And no bodies, just fragments, tooth, thumb, a necklace." Claire clenched her jaw. "This isn't random. It's a message." They had seen plenty of mob hits. But this was surgical. Meant to shock. Meant to start something. And judging by the storm rolling in through the precinct windows, it had just begun. At the Mancini compound, Don Salvatore sat silent at the head of a long oak table, fingers tented, eyes closed. Around him, lieutenants whispered like vultures, circling a wounded beast. "Romano was ours," one muttered. "You sure it wasn't Gallo's crew?" Another hissed. Salvatore opened his eyes. Cold. Calculating. "If it was Gallo, he's already dead," he said calmly. The room fell silent. A trembling capo stepped forward. "Don, should we?" Salvatore raised one hand. "Find me the kid, the brother. He's the only one who doesn't know where he stands." A blood war was about to bloom, and the Don needed a pawn. Somewhere on the East River docks, a hooded man fed files into a burn barrel. Flames licked up photos of Johnny, surveillance reports, police payoffs. Thunder cracked overhead. The man pulled back his hood. Frankie Russo, fixer for the Gallo family. Eyes like razors, he watched the evidence vanish. A small phone buzzed in his coat. One word lit the screen. "Done." Frankie chuckled, tossing in the last folder. "Let the rats fight," he muttered. "We'll own what's left." The massacre wasn't the end. It was the fuse. And Frankie had just struck the match. Michael Romano stood at the edge of the alley where his brother had died, the stench of bleach and rot turning his stomach. Yellow tape still fluttered like warning flags, but the crime scene unit was long gone. He shouldn't be here, but something pulled him. He crouched, fingers brushing the wet stone where the tooth had been. "Why, Johnny," he whispered. Behind him a voice said, "Looking for ghosts?" He spun. Claire Monroe. Badge out, gun holstered. "You're the brother," she said. "You look like him but softer. Less blood on your hands, yet." Michael swallowed. "I just needed to see." Claire studied him. They'll come for you. They always do. She left him in the rain, alone with questions and fear. Michael hadn't asked to be part of this world, but it had already swallowed him. Michael stared at his brother's locker in the family-run auto shop. He'd broken in through the back like they used to as kids. The air smelled of gasoline and metal shavings. The locker creaked open. Inside, a revolver wrapped in oilcloth, a note with a single word, "Run." Michael sank to the floor. The message wasn't love. It was a warning. Footsteps echoed in the garage. Michael tensed, gun now in hand. A figure emerged. Tony Vargas, Johnny's closest friend. "That wasn't meant for you," Tony said quietly. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should Johnny," Michael snapped. Silence. Then Tony held out a folded photo. Johnny, Tony, and a third man Michael didn't know. "Find him. He's the start." And with that, Tony vanished like smoke in shadows. Don Salvatore sat alone in his study, ice clinking in a crystal glass of bourbon. Portraits of long-dead ancestors loomed from the walls. He spoke without looking up. "Tell me about the boy." Across the desk, Luciana, his daughter, leaned forward. "He's green, but scared enough to be useful. And you trust him?" She smirked. "I don't even trust you." Salvatore chuckled darkly. "Blood doesn't equal loyalty, Lucy, not anymore." She tossed a folder onto the desk, Michael's name on the tab. "Then make him an enemy, not a pawn." The Don sipped slowly. "Maybe he can be both." Outside, the storm raged. Inside, trust was a currency neither of them could afford to spend. Claire Monroe was in deep now. Back at her apartment, she pinned crime scene photos to a corkboard, Johnny's remains, Gallo's known associates, the loyalty oath card. Red yarn stretched like veins across the images. Her hands trembled. Too much wasn't adding up. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Silence. Then a voice, "Check the pawn shop on 3rd. Back room." Click, died. Claire grabbed her gun. 10 minutes later, she pushed into the dingy storefront. Dust, dead clocks, and a jittery old man. "Back room," he muttered. Inside, behind false shelving, she found a cache of surveillance tapes. And a photograph of her own partner. The devil wasn't outside the force. He was sitting beside her every damn day. Michael stood on the rooftop of his old school, the city sprawling beneath him like a crooked chessboard. The photo Tony gave him was folded in his coat pocket, a face burned into his mind. He didn't know the man, but his brother had. And that man had vanished a week before Johnny's death. The rain had stopped, but the clouds still lingered. Michael lit a cigarette with shaking hands, just like his brother used to. He wasn't ready for this. But no one was coming to save him. He would either die with questions or survive by finding the answers himself. Below, a black sedan idled. Watching. Waiting. The game had moved forward. And Michael just stepped onto the board. Michael followed the trail to an abandoned boxing gym, the smell of sweat and rust still clinging to the air like old ghosts. Inside, the ropes sagged and punching bags hung like corpses. He moved cautiously, gun tucked in his waistband. In the far corner, a light flickered. Sitting beneath it was the man from the photo, Carlo the Bishop Ventresca, once a trusted Mancini enforcer, now a ghost story. Carlo didn't rise. Just smirked. "Romano blood runs stubborn. Sit down." Michael did. "Why'd you disappear?" Carlo shrugged. "Because loyalty has an expiration date. Your brother found that out too late." Michael's fists clenched. "You sold him out?" Carlo leaned in. "No, kid, he sold me out first." The truth wasn't a blade. It was a bomb, and Michael had just stepped on it. Luciana Mancini lit a cigarette by the waterfront, city lights reflecting on black waves. Her heels clicked against the cobblestones as she paced, waiting. Frankie Russo emerged from the fog. "You playing both sides now, Lucy?" he asked. She exhaled smoke, eyes sharp. "I'm playing survival. You torched Johnny without Salvatore's blessing. That's suicide. Frankie smirked. I left Salvatore alive. That's generosity. She handed him an envelope. Photos, dates, addresses. This is leverage. We use it right. We don't just survive. We rule. Frankie narrowed his eyes. And the kid? Luciana blew out a cloud of smoke. The kid's the match. We just have to light him. Alliances don't come from trust. They come from fire. Claire Monroe watched from across the street as Michael entered the gym. Her instincts screamed at her to intervene, but she waited. When he emerged, he looked different, like something inside had hardened. She tailed him through alleys, her footsteps silent. Back at her car, she played one of the pawnshop tapes. The audio hissed. Then, Johnny's voice. If anything happens to me, look at Claire Monroe. Her blood turned ice. She stopped the tape, breathing ragged. Betrayal wasn't a stranger in this job. But this time, it wore her badge. And someone wanted her framed. Or worse, dead. She wasn't just in the case now. She was the target. Don Gallo's private lounge glowed in crimson velvet and brass. Jazz crooned in the background. Gallo himself, broad-shouldered and snake-eyed, spun a coin between his fingers. You thought you could cut me out? He hissed. The man across from him, a once loyal capo, trembled. It wasn't personal. Gallo stood, towering. That's the only kind of business I do. He raised his hand. 2 bodyguards closed in. The capo begged. Gallo, please. The silenced pistol barked once. The jazz never stopped. Gallo wiped his hands and turned to his consigliere. Burn every bridge. If they ain't with us now, they never were. War didn't start with armies. It started with executions. Michael broke into the apartment above his late brother's safe house, dusty and untouched since the murder. He found stacks of coded ledgers and photos. Among them, one with Johnny shaking hands with Gallo. Betrayal. .com. Or infiltration? A hidden panel clicked open. Inside, a black notebook titled Contingency. Names. Payments. Cops died. Judges. Dot. Even Monroe. His hands shook. Everything was connected. The massacre, the cops, the Mancinis, Gallo, all part of something bigger. Thunder cracked outside as headlights swept across the window. Someone was coming. Michael didn't have time to think. He stuffed the notebook into his coat and dove out the fire escape just as the door shattered behind him. Truth, it turned out, was flammable. Michael ducked into a church confessional, soaked and shaking. Bless me, Father, for I'm about to sin, he whispered. But the voice from behind the grate wasn't a priest's. Then confess quickly, Michael. Time's not your friend. He froze. On the other side, Luciana. She slid an envelope through the grate. You want the truth? Start with that. Inside, photographs of Claire Monroe and Johnny, embracing, laughing. One showed them passing a briefcase. They were lovers, Luciana said. And partners. Michael's voice broke. No, he hated cops. He loved her more. Michael tore out of the booth, storming into the chapel, but Luciana was already gone. Only a single candle flickered where she'd been. Truth doesn't just hurt. It rearranges the battlefield. Claire slammed her apartment door shut, heart pounding. The photo of her and Johnny lay on the table, next to the recorder she hadn't dared to finish playing. Outside, footsteps echoed in the hall. She drew her gun. A knock. Claire, Michael said. We need to talk. She opened the door, gun raised. You followed me? You followed Johnny, he shot back. What were you to him? She lowered the gun slowly. Everything. Until he chose the family. He stepped forward. And the massacre? Claire's eyes brimmed. I tried to pull him out. He wouldn't run. So I burned the tapes. I covered for him. And now you think I killed him? Silence. Then Michael whispered, I don't know what to believe anymore. Claire nodded. Then believe this, someone's trying to make us both ghosts. Back at the Mancini estate, Luciana stormed into the study, eyes blazing. You used me, she growled. Salvatore looked up slowly. You offered yourself? I accepted. She slammed a folder on his desk, copies of Johnny and Claire's file. You knew he was feeding her information. You let him. The Don leaned back. I needed the leaks. And now, I need you to end them. You want me to kill Michael? Luciana hissed. He's a boy. Salvatore stood slow and cold. He's a bloodline. And in this war, bloodlines either serve or they end. Her voice cracked. You said I could choose my path. He stepped close. You did, and this is where it leads. Outside, thunder cracked. Inside, loyalty shattered. Frankie Russo watched the chaos unfold from a rooftop across the harbor, sipping whiskey. Beside him, a radio hissed. Mancini girls wavering, a voice said. And the cops spooked. Frankie smiled. Perfect. Chaos breeds kings. He turned to a map of the city pinned under stones. Push Gallo against Mancini. Let the boy chase shadows. And when the smoke clears. He raised a match to a photo of both families together. We inherit the ashes. The photo burned, curling black. You sure Michael won't figure it out? The voice asked. Frankie crushed the ember underfoot. Even if he does, he'll be too late. This isn't a war, it's a purge. He stared at the rising smoke. And I'm the fire. Michael stood in a payphone booth, heart pounding. Across town, bodies were dropping. The war had begun. The phone clicked. Frankie's voice slithered in. You've been busy, kid. I know what you did, Michael hissed. Frankie chuckled. Then you know why it had to be done. Johnny was your friend. And now he's fertilizer. You gonna cry or grow up? Michael's fingers trembled. I'm coming for you. Good, Frankie said. Let's see if blood runs thicker than bullets. The line went dead. Michael stepped out into the street, rain washing over his face. He wasn't scared anymore. He was done running. And somewhere between vengeance and truth, he'd just become something dangerous. Michael loaded the revolver in Claire's apartment as she traced routes on a city map. You're not trained for this, she said, watching him. He didn't look up. Neither was Johnny. Didn't stop them from killing him. Claire handed him a photograph, Frankie's safe house. He won't be alone. Neither am I, Michael said, slipping the gun into his coat. Claire stepped closer. After this, you'll never get to walk away. He met her eyes. I never got to walk in. Outside, a thunderstorm cracked open the night. Inside, two broken souls prepared for a war they didn't start, but damn sure intended to finish. For Johnny. For truth. For themselves. The hour of reckoning had begun. The Gallo warehouse was quiet, too quiet. Inside, crates of liquor, masked machine guns, and guards lounged with cigarettes. Then came the blackout. Lights dead. Panic rose. A single gunshot echoed, then 5 more. Frankie burst from his office, rage twisting his face. We're under, he screamed. But the shooter wasn't a crew. It was one man. Michael, face streaked with blood and rain, moved like a ghost, each shot precise. Where's Russo? He growled at a wounded guard. The man choked. Basement. Claire appeared at his side. We finish this. We finish it clean. Michael nodded, blood dripping from his sleeve. He wasn't here for intimidation. He was here for justice, or vengeance. Tonight, the difference didn't matter. In the basement, Frankie waited, revolver cocked, cigarette glowing like a devil's eye. He knew they'd come. Knew how it ended. Claire descended first. Frankie raised the gun. You came too, he mocked. Romano blood must be contagious. Michael stepped from behind a pillar, gun aimed. It's a disease, and you're the cure. They circled each other like wolves. Johnny begged me to spare you, Frankie said. I didn't listen. Claire's finger tightened. Neither will we. Frankie fired. So did Claire. Michael. I. The air cracked like thunder. When the smoke cleared, Frankie lay still, eyes open, disbelief frozen. Claire collapsed, bleeding from her side. Michael caught her. "Stay with me," he whispered. She smiled weakly. "We finished it." Blood pool. Time slowed. But justice had spoken. Luciana stood at her father's grave as news of Russo's death spread. Rain soaked her black coat. No one else came. No flowers. Just silence and stone. She lit a match, letting it hover over a folder marked contingency. Then she dropped it onto the grave. Flames licked the paper. "No more pawns," she whispered. Behind her, Salvatore's former consigliere stepped forward. "You're the last Mancini," he said. "What now?" She didn't turn. "Now we rebuild. No blood oaths, no backroom promises. Just fire." The storm rolled over the cemetery, but she didn't flinch. Luciana wasn't mourning. She was birthing something new. The ashes weren't the end. They were the foundation. Michael walked into Johnny's old bar at dawn, empty except for ghosts. He poured a drink, slid his brother's silver chain across the counter, and sat in the silence. Claire survived barely. The war was over. But the city had changed. So had he. The notebook was gone, burned. The families were fractured. But the streets, still dangerous, still whispering his name. A man approached from the shadows. "We heard what you did. Some of us want to talk." Michael nodded. "Then talk fast. I'm not here to play Don." "Then what are you?" the man asked. Michael stared out the window at the rising sun. Something they'll never see coming. His glass clinked. "New." The new era had no name, but it had begun. Michael visited Claire in the hospital, her skin pale under the soft glow of morning light. Machines beeped in quiet rhythm. "They're saying I'm a hero," she muttered, voice hoarse. He sat beside her, eyes hollow. "Are they wrong?" She smiled bitterly. "Depends on who writes the story." He placed a single lily on her tray. "We didn't win. We just stopped losing." She nodded. "Truth is, no one wins in this city. They just survive long enough to forget what they lost." Michael stood, tightening his coat. "I burned the notebook. It's over." "Until it isn't," she replied. He looked back at her. "I'm done." Claire's eyes locked with his. "You were never just Johnny's brother. Don't forget that." But as he walked out, he already had. Luciana stood before a half-demolished building in Little Naples, the old Mancini hideout. Bricks lay broken, foundation cracked. A single crew remained, silent, waiting for orders. She held no gun, just blueprints. "We build something new," she said. "No blood, no names, just purpose." The men exchanged glances. "No bosses?" one asked. "No ghosts," she corrected. A new world from the rubble of the old. It wasn't redemption. But it was something else, a chance. She placed a brick down herself, hands bare, trembling. Rain began to fall, soft, not angry. For the first time in years, Luciana Mancini felt clean. She didn't lead by fear. She led by having survived. Gallo's empire crumbled overnight. His clubs raided. His lieutenants flipped. But he? Gone. No body. No trace. Just an empty chair in a casino backroom and a fresh pack of cards on the table. Some said he fled to Havana. Others swore they saw him in Chicago. But Michael knew better. Men like Gallo don't vanish. They haunt. He passed the room once, glanced in, and froze. For a second, he thought he saw Gallo's reflection in the glass. But it was just his own, older, colder, unfamiliar. "Power doesn't disappear," he whispered to himself. "It mutates. And sometimes, it wears your face." A bar opened in Johnny's name, Romano's, on the edge of the river. It served cheap whiskey, better coffee, and no questions. Michael didn't run it. He just sat there some nights, in the corner booth, invisible. The patrons didn't recognize him, and he preferred it that way. A blues band played in the background, soft and sad. Claire's seat stayed empty. Luciana never came. But something about the place, old bricks, cigarette smoke, river fog, it gave him a place to remember without bleeding. He didn't speak much. Just watched. Just listened. Because now he understood. Survival wasn't silence. It was knowing when to speak, and when to disappear. The city kept moving. Cars honked. Cops took bribes. New faces filled old graves. But in a forgotten alley behind Cicero's, a new plaque was bolted into the stone. Here, silence ended. No ceremony. No headlines. Just that line. Michael passed it once on his way to nowhere. He stopped, touched it, said nothing. Then, walked on. His story wouldn't be told in papers or whispers. But the streets would remember. Not the blood, not the gunfire. The silence that came after. The kind that only comes when the last secret dies with you. And somewhere in the city, a boy became a ghost. And the ghost became a myth. A letter, unsigned, arrived at Claire's bedside weeks later. Inside, a photo of the Romano brothers as children, holding toy guns, grinning under the summer sun. Scrawled on the back, "We were good before the streets." She traced her fingers over Johnny's face, tears catching in her throat. She didn't know where Michael had gone. But she knew he wasn't coming back. Some wounds don't get stitched. They harden into armor. The letter smelled faintly of tobacco and old paper. She slipped it into a drawer beside her badge. Not everything could be solved. Not every ghost needed chasing. But this one haunted her differently. Because this ghost used to smile. Luciana stood before the first wall of the new center they were building. Shelter, school, sanctuary. A child handed her a brick. "Is this yours now?" he asked. She knelt. "It's ours." No guards. No guns. Just concrete, labor, and breath. Word had spread. Mancini, blood building, not burning. Some came with questions. Some came with threats. But most came with hands ready. Change doesn't scream. It whispers. In mortar and sweat. Luciana wiped dust from her brow and looked at the rising foundation. "Oh, this is how we end it," she said aloud. "Not with blood, but with a place no one has to run from." The streets wouldn't believe it. Not yet. But one brick at a time, the myth of war was turning into memory. Gallo's name became an echo, something said in bars, feared in alleys. No one saw him again. But stories emerged. A fight in Havana, a corpse in Marseille, a smuggler in Tangiers. Nothing confirmed. Only footprints in smoke. One thing was certain. His empire was dead, but his legend bloomed. Children of criminals whispered of him like a monster. "Don't cross the line or Gallo finds you." Truth? He was gone long before the war. Long before the first bullet. He'd been a shadow wearing flesh. And now? He was free. Or something worse. Untouchable. Sometimes the dead don't rest. Sometimes they just change zip codes. Michael stood on a train platform just before dawn. No suitcase, no destination. Just a ticket and silence. The track stretched ahead like unfinished sentences. A priest passed him, nodded, and kept walking. No words. No judgment. Michael breathed deep, the cold air slicing his lungs clean. Somewhere he'd start again. Maybe in a place without ghosts. Maybe. The train screeched in. He stepped aboard, face hidden under a fedora. As the city slipped behind him, so did the name Romano. He didn't need it anymore. All he needed was distance. The kind not even memory could travel. Sometimes redemption doesn't look like forgiveness. It looks like escape. In the alley behind Cicero's, the rain had stopped. But the stain was still there, faint, faded, but real. Time doesn't erase. It just rewrites in softer ink. A boy walked by, maybe 10, paused by the plaque. He touched it. Here silence ended, he read aloud. His mother tugged him along. But he looked back. One more time. Something about the place held weight. Not fear. Not even pain. Just gravity. A presence. And somewhere beyond the bricks and mortar, Michael walked unseen, unheard, unburdened. A ghost. Maybe. But not the kind that haunts. The kind that watches. The kind that waits. Because in cities like this, myths don't die. They just wait for the next scream.